Okay, let's make sure this is all going the right way real quick, guys. Okay, cool. Looks like we're there. Looks like that's working. Okay, let's get the headset actually attached well. That's going. Okay, let's get into it. So today we're going to do some flying, if you haven't guessed. And I'm going to try to hit some points about how things work. So first thing, we're going to get this set up as if two grown men were inside of this Robinson. And as you can see, we're already having to bring the fuel level down some, so we're at pretty much payload there. I'm going to go back to Asheville. Looks like everybody's flying out of here currently. I'm not going to go through startup procedure, but what I am going to do, I'm going to change what the weather was. I'm going to go back to last week. Do Wednesday, Tuesday. Take it back to midday. Let's see, get my controls set up for VR. Okay, so if you haven't seen, the big thing going on in America right now is there is a pretty devastating hurricane in the area of the Asheville, North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, the western of the Carolinas. Let's make me a little bit taller. Let's scoot back a little bit. Okay, cool. So here we are, a few days after the hurricane. And we're going to address some questions I've had some of my more normal friends ask me, my non-helicopter obsessed friends, ask me about the hurricane, the usage of helicopters, why they can't bring in more equipment or more people or take more people out through the use of helicopters. And hopefully I can address some of those things with the physics of how helicopters work. If you weren't here a few seconds ago, initially setting up this helicopter to go fly, I've got it set up around 99.9% of what payload would be, which is not much. This is a Robinson R-22. It's a small two-seater gas-powered helicopter that is usually used for the training or personal transportation back and forth if you live in a way where you can do that. There's a handful of people that use it for agricultural purposes in some ways. That's more or less drying over fields to blow the dust off or the moisture off if it's frosting outside. it's dewy, and getting that on the cherries and different fruits that can soak that up. Running animals off of different grains, etc. But yeah, this is a very low-powered helicopter. In my search and pursuit of getting an actual helicopter license, I've called places and they've asked how much I weigh, because if I weigh more than what this particular helicopter allows for me and the instructor who would sit right there, then I would have to pay a lot more money to actually get seat time in the Robinson R44 or whatever other helicopter that they have that's open for training. But most people think helicopters are just an airplane that functions like an elevator and then tilts forward and goes forward. But that's not 100% the case for really any of them. Any helicopter can get up to payload, and it can bring them to a way or to a point or to a level to where they're incapable of taking off with the power that's given to them. How? Excuse me. So basically, the rotor of the helicopter, let me stick my head out the window, the rotor up there, always spins the same RPM. You can see that by the gauge on the right here that says R, while the one on the left says E. The E is our engine RPM, the R is the rotor RPM, joined by a clutch, and that allows the engine to spin the rotor just like a car's transmission driving the wheels. Now with a helicopter, most people would assume as you throttle up, you go up, as you throttle down, you go down. That's not the case. The rotor is always going to spin at the same RPM. It's a fixed RPM rotor system. Now what does change is the pitch of the blades. So if you can imagine, let me get my laser pointer out here. Let me let this lady talk also. Thank you, frequency change approved.
Tower helicopter November 420 Sierra November frequency change.
Okay, so I wish I could turn off ATC in this game, but I'm going to keep on blabbing anyways. So a standard rotor, or you can imagine a rotor blade under normal spinning being flat. Whenever you pull up on a thing called the collective, which I'll show you in just a second, you add pitch into it. So as it spins around, it's scooping more air, it's cutting more air. And this right here is the collective. As I go down, you see I lose all my lift. As I pull up, it's catching my flight. So the more angle I put up on my collective down here in between the seats, the more cut that the blade's cutting into the air, the more chop that you hear, and the more lift it produces. Now, sure, you could put an infinitely increasing angle in the blades until it's 90 degrees and then it's ineffective. But also this is a very small helicopter and it does not make a lot of power. So the engine's not capable of spinning the blade with an RPM that's steeper than whatever percentage the engineers have figured out. And also at a certain angle you lose a lot of the effectiveness of it, where it's always not just going to end up pushing more and more and more. So that's something that needs to be considered when looking at how much a helicopter can push up. So when you see something bigger like a Black Hawk, for instance, it's got two engines, it's got massive amounts of power, and it can lift up to 10,000 pounds of external load, if not more, depending on how it's kind of set up. But I think 10,000 pounds is around its area of operation for external load. While this one here basically has no external load. You may be able to put a small spray bar on the bottom, but I don't think you'll have enough weight allowance to even put fluid in here. So with a small helicopter like this, sure, it's a very capable thing to get into one of these valleys, but getting out of the valley becomes a problem. And you may say, cool, if your helicopter is at a certain weight, or let's think of a better way to word this real quick. Also, we're just west of Asheville now, if anybody's curious. So Also, there's a thing that comes into effect here called ground effect. Airplanes are affected by this as well. When you're hovering near the ground, you have a bit of extra usage of the power of the engine because you're getting some of a cushion of an air, give or take. There's a lot more into the aerodynamics of it, but you're getting a bit of a cushion of air to go along with your helicopter to keep it above the ground. So in a hovering situation, I may be using, let's say, 60 to 70% of my available power out of the engine. Let's say it's a 200 horsepower engine, I may be only using 140 to hover right off the ground. If I were to stop now and try to hover in the exact same place out of ground effect, where I'm not near the ground and I'm not getting any cushioning effects, then I may have to end up using 80 to 90, if not more, percentage of the power of the engine. I may have to be using 180, 190 horsepower. And it's very stressing on the engine to run it at that sort of power level, that sort of demand for such a long time. And sometimes you can only hover in ground effect if you are loaded to a certain extent. This helicopter here can not legally take off over payload if it's able to hover in ground effect, if the temperature is cold enough to where the air is dense enough and the engine's making just a little bit more power because of that. It can hover in ground effect out of payload or over payload, but it cannot hover out of ground effect. So a thing that helicopters do is called transitional lift, and that is when you start moving forward, your helicopter will angle forward a little bit, and the air moving over the rotor system and the helicopter itself makes the helicopter rotor system, give or take, a giant wing. And then with that extra lift as you're moving, you're able to take off even with a very heavily loaded helicopter. So how does that come into effect with the Hurricanes? So here I am, still very fully loaded. We're going to pick this little clearing down here to fly into. I'm going to kind of hot dog this approach here, because this looks like something I can get out of again, so I don't have to respawn. But we're going to go for just what's on the other side of the our compass here. So a lot of people say, cool, we cleared an area in our yard that is X amount big by X amount big, so you should be able to come and land a helicopter in here, because let's just say it's a cylindrical thing with trees where they just cleared out a 70 by 70 clearing. While if we can imagine that no leaves and no branches and no debris will fall off of these trees, we can imagine the perfect world of that happening. Coming down into or holding a hover over that certain area and then coming down into it is going to use a lot of the available engine power, especially in a fully loaded helicopter. So it takes a lot more power out of the engine to lower you down. You're having to fight a lot more with the pedals because the engine's having to put a whole bunch more torque on the body of it while trying to maintain or trying to get the rotor to turn with that much pitch or collective added into it. And it's in an underpowered helicopter like this, I honestly wouldn't know. Depending on air movement, if there's a wind, it might help out some. But you might not be able to get out of a hole like this because of the limits of the power of whichever unit you're in at the moment. Let me get set down here so we can focus a little bit more on the conversation. So here we are. We've made it down, and we have told our 200-pound survivalist to hop out of the passenger seat. And let's say we get a 250, or can I adjust weight in VR? Let's see. Actually, I can't. I'm going to pop out of VR, guys. Sorry for a second. Let's see if I can use my mouse here. Why did I reset my weights? Oh, that's not good. That's why it's been so easy. So a 220-pound passenger. Here we go. I'm over payload here by 20 pounds. And that's the way we're going to have it. So now I'm going to have to fight to try to get out of here. Now there's a chance that I won't even be able to pick up from where I'm at here. Oh, hey, I should have a passenger more often. Let's see. Let's go backwards a little bit. She does not look like she's 220 pounds. Let's go up some. Actually, let's go forward a little bit. Okay, so here we are. We have an overweight passenger. Sorry, honey. But, let's see. Here we go. I'm pulling up the collective now. You can see my gauge down here that's in the center-ish of the screen, the bottom right. And what that is, that's showing the manifold pressure of the engine of the helicopter. The more power that it's demanding, the more manifold pressure that it can demand. And then probably in the temperature range that we're at now, it'd be nice to keep it under 23. But actually, I'm just going to try to hover straight up real quick. Let me turn around so we can have a better view. Okay. So I'm going to try to hover straight up as if we were in a cylinder of trees, you know, somewhere where we can't get any forward speed to get out. As you can see, I'm already up to the danger limits of what manifold pressure is. If I'm trying to keep it under 21, it's impossible for me to keep this helicopter climbing, trying to get it outside of that ground effect area just because of the fact that I called you fat. I'm very sorry. I don't like this passenger. Keep looking forward, please. So now what I'm going to try to do is drag the skids very lightly. And use this little area of a field that we have here. And I'm going to pick up speed and try to get enough airspeed to where I'm pulling or obtaining enough transitional lift to clear the trees. And this is while keeping it under 23-ish inches of manifold pressure. And I am struggling right now. Because while Sim's not necessarily going to blow up the helicopter, if I pull too much manifold pressure, I know in real life it's not something you would want to do, because then you're damaging your helicopter and you can no longer do any sort of operations. So now, yes, we do have enough transitional lift to get moving. And I can circle more and more to get out of a bigger valley or hole or whatever like this. But when you do turn, you do lose airspeed if the hole is small enough. So it's not always an option to do, just depending on your situation in the area. So, yes, there is possible for a helicopter to not have enough power because of the weight of goods that you're bringing in, because of the extra weight of passengers, because of whatever factor. Weather is a factor in this as well. Higher temperatures mean a lot less dense air. So if it's super hot and muggy outside, humidity has a big effect. Or super hot outside, you have less dense air, and you also have less available power through the engine itself. If it's humid outside, you know, that does add some thickness to it, but there's a whole bunch of things that take into different things to take into account, and there's all that stuff that you learn in ground school and when you're learning a particular helicopter, and its limits of pressure and operational temperatures and altitudes. Like, for instance, this R-22, when the air is thin enough, you can't fly anymore. The blades are incapable of putting enough pitch in to get enough bite to get the helicopter off the ground. If I were to spawn us into somewhere that's 14,000 foot elevation area, let's just say South America, in the Andes or something, where there are airports at that sort of altitude, you can't take off, you can't get off the ground. It's something where you would have to drag skids, but even then you would have to maintain such an immense airspeed that effectively impossible to fly in that sort of situation. So yeah, there's a small lesson on a small underpowered helicopter. We're gonna bring this woman back to Asheville and drop her off. If not, I can see if I can find a fire department between here and there where they're doing citizen reclaiming. Maybe she can go work in the volunteer kitchen. She seems to be in good enough health to where we don't have to worry about getting her to a hospital. So what we'll do, we'll get her somewhere and see if we can drop her off. And then what we'll do, we can do a helicopter that's a bit better suited for hurricane relief sort of efforts, especially in somewhere like the mountains of the Carolinas where you are dealing with altitude, and I am moving very fast, where you are dealing with altitude and where you are dealing with some confined area landings where you have to worry about getting into a field like this one in front of us, which isn't that bad, or even smaller. You look at videos like the Cletus McFarland one, which I will try to recreate a couple of his landings here. He's got a very effective helicopter for situations like this. It has a very good lifting capacity. It's a very powerful engine for its size. And it's a very small footprint of a helicopter as well. There may not be as much seating room in it as you would the bigger brother to this helicopter, the Robinson R44, the R66, or even a Bell 206. But it has a very small footprint, and it's very quick and powerful and very safe also. So let's see, we're only 3 miles from Asheville, but I've already done my spiel on the underpoweredness of the Robinson R22. So we're going to pretend that this is a fire department here at this blue house. I'm going to turn around another 180 and do an approach coming down from that road, and we'll drop her off and call this one a successful mission. And also now I may be under payload, depending on how much fuel we've burned. I don't know. But regardless, I'm going to try to keep some sort of airspeed forward until I don't need it anymore. Which we're going to put her at the crest of this hill. This would be a smarter move for a pilot coming in. I'm really having to use collective right now. More than what I would usually expect in a landing. Just because we were on the upper limits of what payload is. So, it's been a good flight. Good to see you. They need to work on your head turning thing. I don't appreciate the passenger staring at me, but let's move on to our next thing. What do you guys say? I'm going to take you guys off of VR mode. That way it's easier for me to navigate. Let's see. Ooh, actually, I want to need to be back in VR mode for a second to hit the main menu. Now let me hop out. There we go. Now let's do the Cletus McFarland thing. Go on live traffic. What's going on here? Off. Now let's move over to something like the 500E, which is famously what Cletus flies. Now there was a time, or a video, where him and his wife Maddie were going around flying, and they had a pretty much near payload thing. I'm going to see if I can put myself at capacity here. 250 on baggage. Yeah, I'm about 50 pounds short of payload capacity here. Let me pop back into the VR set. Get that centered. And we'll have to actually double check the weight stuff once we get in here to see if it cucked or if it didn't cuck the... Let's get in a normal sitting position first. What do you say? Funny enough, the MD you fly from the left side. Reasons why? I don't know. I'm sure there is a reason because there are different helicopters that shoot on different sides. Let's go down a little bit. I'm going to take you out of VR first. Dang it, I'm about to reset this. Don't know why we're outside the helicopter now. Weight and balance, yep. I messed up my weight and stuff, didn't even keep it. That's annoying. That's all set up to 250. To there. Whew, hello. Alt back. Okay, we are loaded up with passengers on this one because I am simulating the weight. Actually, I need to be a little bit more to the right so this feels more right for me. Okay, let's do this. We are doing the same thing, but we are in Cletus's much more powerful MD 500E. And this time I actually have friends who are in the Carolinas currently. Trevor, Brady, Matt. Godspeed. Currently, though, it is about a week. Is today Sunday? Yeah. Or Saturday. It's about a week since the a week and a couple of days since the hurricane hit this area. So if you're watching this deeper in the future, very, very devastating hurricane to the area. A lot of the areas here within the immediate vicinity around Asheville hit water levels over the 1,000-year flood capacity or 1,000-year rainfall levels. Even a vaster majority of the area was in the over the 100, 200, 300, 500 year rain and flood levels. And that all hit within a 24-hour period. There is a good bit of rain beforehand, which soaked the ground, which did not help any. And then you bring an entire hurricane's worth of stuff to come and dump onto that at that point in time. And that made it a very, very bad situation, because you can also imagine 30 inches of rain on flat ground, while bad, it does not focus that 30 inches of rain into one area. But in a lot of the western North Carolina, western South Carolina, eastern Tennessee, northeastern Georgia, a bit of Virginia, you are looking at a lot of hills and valleys. So instead of 30 inches from this entire valley's worth of area, you can imagine that 30 inches getting funneled straight down through one of these valleys that we're going to be flying over here. Let's wait for ATC to get done yapping.
Asheville Tower Helicopter November 420 Sierra November frequency change. Asheville Approach Helicopter November 420 Sierra November is type helicopter 500E 5 miles northwest of Asheville 3000
So I'm
Request flight following.
tired of waiting to finish hearing them yap. So let's get back into it. So all of that rain, instead of just settling over a certain area, you can imagine all the rain in this small little valley, gully area getting funneled down to where that lake is. So instead of 30 inches on the lake, you're getting hundreds of inches of rain all running downhill, combining into one area. And a lot of these gullies and valleys and stuff all have very, very beautiful rivers that are running down them. They are extremely nice places to be, to visit, I encourage absolutely everybody to get into this area of the country just because of how nice it is. It's such a good setup. It's phenomenally clean. Actually, let me ask people in the chat real quick. There's a few of you guys in here, 3 or 4 that are live. I just remember my TV that's on in front of me actually has the sound up a little bit. Is it too annoying for you, or can you hear me talk fine? Or do I need to turn the sound down on that some, or let me know. I'll check the messages here in a second. So either way, beautiful area. Get up there, see it, visit it. They need people coming through, especially once this is cleaned up more than ever. There are places that are more western of the Carolinas that are still open, where they just had more wind, little rain, some trees down, some minor flooding, but the areas are still open for people to come through and spend money. And if you don't get up there, especially during this fall season, then a lot of these places are at risk of shutting down and losing business just because of nobody coming to see them. There's overhead, there's employees, there's people that need to eat, people that need to drink. And if you're not there to support them, then they can't survive. So yeah, especially in this valley here, you can imagine more or less everywhere that we're looking got 30 plus inches of rain, and it's all going to funnel down through whatever river is running down the middle of this valley. And water is not a kind force. Water more or less shaped the entire earth as we know it. These mountains here used to look like the Rockies. Used to look like everything out in California, but millions and millions of years of wear on them, and it comes down to nice, smoothed off, rounded areas where trees can grow and plants can thrive and survive. And yeah. Regardless, get out to Asheville right now. If you are watching, you're interested in getting out there. There's a lot of people that are actually already out there. A lot of people are already out there. My friends who are out there say that there is plenty of the basic supplies. There's an abundance of water. There is an abundance of canned food. There's an abundance of most things that you would immediately send after a disaster, because basically everybody in the Southeast has donated in some way, shape, or form. What they don't have now is this coming week, it's a lot of cold weather coming in, or cooler weather, 50-degree temperatures, and on top of the mountains and everything like that. It's not going to be a warm one. And give me just a second, guys. I'm actually going to do this for my own sake. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit. Let's see where we're at. Okay, cool. This should be much more bearable for anybody listening. And now I can't even hear it. There we go. That gives me some audio cues, but I'm not killing it for you guys. So on the off chance that anybody could not hear me on the earlier Robinson R22 flying that I was doing, we're talking about power in helicopters and how it's effective in situations like North Carolina. So to reiterate, this helicopter works the exact same way. The rotor speed is a constant thing. You have rotor RPM there, and you sit around 100 to 104%. That's typical for most helicopters. Some may operate a bit differently. I don't know enough about different platforms to tell you yay or nay on that. So we're going to fly up this valley here and find a nice confined area to land. Right now we are currently carrying, not including me or my co-pilot here, which I've allotted 500 pounds for, 250 pounds each, I believe. Either way, I have around 1,000 pounds total of extra weight inside of this helicopter. The other one, if I was just flying as myself with no passenger, I would only have around a 250 pounds max, and that would be taking off with about a third of a tank of fuel, which doesn't leave me much for any extra activities. if I see something and I need to monitor while they clear a tree out of the way, and I don't want to have to come back, or if there's something that's going on, you want to have at least some fuel in excess to drop in and to help however you can. But on the rotor RPM there, the helicopter's rotors always been the same. The thing that makes you go up or down is actually adding in more or less pitch to the blades. Adding that sort of pitch into the blades will slow down the rotor. That's why you need enough power inside of a helicopter to do that. And you can also imagine a helicopter with 1,000 pounds of extra people or supplies will need a lot more rotor pitch to get it to take off, or to get it moving, to get it mobile, or more blades. This one is a 5-blade helicopter. And of course, more blades takes more power as well. So it would be nice to have a nice, super small, super efficient helicopter, but you also have to have an airframe that's big enough to handle that sort of power with the or that comes with moving that much sort of weight, that much sort of blade resistance and rotational force out of that. Sure, you could somehow, if you're an engineering marvel, put the engine setup out of a Huey, a single T-58 engine out of a Huey, into something like a Robinson R22, which is what we flew last. But it's something that's probably going to tear apart the airframe. You're going to need such an immense tail rotor on the back of it to counter any sort of lifting force if you have enough blade to pick up the weight that a Huey does with a Robinson. I don't think the tail boom will actually be able to support the amount of counter-rotational forces that you would need. So yeah, you need a big enough and stout enough and strong enough helicopter to support the engine, and you need enough engine to support whatever sort of weight or passengers or payload, just in general, of what you need to do. So here we are, we're about 50 pounds under payload, minus whatever gas that we spent to get in here. And I'm going to start an out of ground effect hover, or as close as I can get to it. And then we're going to slowly drop ourselves down. I'm actually going to move forward a bit because I don't have a co-pilot to tell me if my tail boom is clear. Shout out to Cletus and his wife Maddie. She did great co-piloting, and I even noticed that when they were leaving the engines running, when they didn't do a full shutdown, she would sit inside and she would babysit the controls as Garrett would hop out, because it's always nice to have somebody who knows what's going on the anti-torque pedals, on the cyclic, on the collective, to catch something if something bad happens. So yeah, also to take into consideration landing with full payloads like this is any extra wind, any extra things that you can't plan for. Actually had plenty of room to come in, even though I did a very, very vertical landing or takeoff here. But what we'll do again, I'll hop out of the VR for a second. I will readjust our payload to put us just over the limit. And we'll try to take up out of this gulch with whatever lack of lifting capabilities that we have. Let's see, I'm going to put you guys on my forehead because I can see better outside for this. We have 2,931 out of 3,000. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bump our 3,500. Oh no. There we go, we're now 50 pounds over payload capacity. And I'm probably going to have to fight this a good bit to get this to take off, where I'll have to try to build some sort of transitional lift. Go up some. How you doing, bud? Let's go. Cool, that feels good enough. So right now I'm watching my rotor RPM. You can see it dropping pretty decent. What else can we look at? We can look at the torque. There's a lot of different gauges that we can look at to see how we can manage that. I was not looking at what I was doing on that. Okay, cool. And also something to think about with heavier loads. Let's see if we encounter a ghost tree here. And I am pushing the torque limits up there, that's for sure. Running a slightly lower level of detail does not show me all of the tree. As you can see, they change a bit as we fly around them.
Asheville approach helicopter November 420
So,
Sierra November is type
I do
helicopter
encounter an
500
occasional ghost tree
miles
when doing
northwest
these
of November
closer
Charlie
proximity or more
1
confined area
3,800
landings.
feet. Request flight following.
And that's just a reality of doing a little flight simulator for something like this. So yeah, another thing to consider with payload is helicopters have a very specific center of balance.
Squawk 1555
Same thing with
helicopter,
airplanes.
Sierra November.
Before you take off every time, you should be working a weight load balance sheet beforehand to make sure that, one, you're not overloading the helicopter with the known amount of fuel that's in it, with your weight as a passenger or the pilot. The passenger, any baggage or whatever that comes into the helicopter should be taken into account, because there is a chance where if it's something that's more set up for passenger use, like let's just assume a BO-105 like Cletus and Roman Atwood had both bought from Heavy D Sparks. It's good for 3 passengers in the rear, I believe, pilot and co-pilot, or pilot and passenger up front, so extremely compromised. And it could be a thing also where I'm not 100% sure on this, but I would assume if there is a turbulence issue, that could maybe overstress some of the blades. I just saw that y'all reconnected, so I'm going to assume that you maybe didn't hear that. Regardless, payload is a very, very important thing to have to watch in something like this. Not just because of being able to take off, but just because the handling and the usage of the helicopter is so dangerous at that point to where it's not worth risking you, anybody else around you, your passengers, whoever you're helping, and putting them in that situation. And that also makes you a liability because you're something that somebody else has to rescue at that point. You are then a big injury. You are then somebody who needs the assistance of somebody else in a helicopter, and that's a lot of taking valuable resources from a place that really doesn't have any valuable resources at the moment to give up. Except for lithium, but we're not going to get into that. So let's see, should we look for a fire department? Or what we assume would be a fire department. Let's come over to this little town down here, instead of flying another 10 minutes back to Asheville. Or 5 minutes, we were doing 120 miles an hour, if not more. So we'll run an approach in here, make this a nice little landing. But also you got to think on these helicopters as well, when they are full with fuel, their payload is much lower, or their available payload is much lower than if you were running a half tank of fuel. So a lot of times in these rescue operations, depending on what they plan, if they're going out there and kind of running it by feel, they don't know how long they're going to have to be on station for. So I don't know what the pilots out there were doing, if they were completely topping off the tanks, or if they were settling on the fact that they would be coming back to the home point, the main LZ, multiple times during the day. If they just knew that they'd be topping off multiple times or bringing it back to a half tank, or whatever it needs, you know. That's all down to the pilot, all down to how they plan on running their missions. And I say we use this blue building again, so we like our blue firehouses here. I'll do the same thing, come down here, I'm doing a little downwind leg and use that as an approach on that street there. Yeah, this is a very, very strong helicopter for the contentions of extraction of people. The diameter of the rotors and the overall length is very small compared to other helicopters with similar power. It's a very good setup for getting in small places and getting out, and that's probably why the military uses these as their little birds, just because of situations like that. So let's see, my mouse is... Nope, not able to select the weight and stuff on that. So let's actually hop out of VR. Come over here. Get rid of these people. Yeah, I'm still 40 pounds over capacity there. And I was only at 47% fuel there, with 2 very grown adults, and some normal-sized passengers and other people. So now we're down to... I don't like the way that does that. I don't like the way that balances it out. Reset. 190. 50% fuel, that puts me at 25% payload. Okay, let's hop back into VR. Let's reset how we're sitting, because for some reason that doesn't remember that. And now I don't have a passenger. Sad. But this does give me the ability to go pick up another 1,000 pounds worth of people and things. Oh wow, I am barely moving the collective now, and I'm getting lift as compared to what I was doing with the extra passengers and stuff in here. Just that is something that you have to pay attention to, where if you do 30 minutes of flying with extra weight, either at payload or over payload, let's not overfly the building because that's where the people are. So if you do 30 minutes of flying with people or things on here, and you get very used to the amount of payload that you have, when you hop back in, if you aren't paying attention or if you aren't actively thinking about that, you can be very, very thrown off with what the handling of the helicopter is going to be. And of course, that works both ways. It was much more twitchy taking off there compared to what it was earlier. See, that river right there would have been huge when this was going on. So yeah, there's so much to consider when it comes into running these ops, and I had this false sense, which I'm very well aware of my false sense, but I feel like I can hop in some, if not most, helicopters, and as long as somebody's there to babysit me through the process of startup and all the bells and whistles of a particular platform, that I could fly it. And while I only have experience currently flying in the simulator itself, I do feel like I understand the systems. I have my pedals, I have my cyclic and collective, where my brain works to get that sense of how they all work together figured out. So I feel like I could hop in most helicopters and fly it. But I know that when I do start flying, I will have to treat it as though I am brand new and I've never even considered the fact of how things work. And I will need to put hundreds of hours underneath my belt to get me to a point to where I would go out and run missions, for lack of a better word, of picking people up, dropping off supplies, especially when it comes to confined area landings. That's where the problems get. I feel like once you have your private and then some hours, that for the most part, you can run a standard approach into a standard airport or a standard area where you're not trying to do a max performance takeoff, and you should be fine. But doing any sort of confined area landings in unfamiliar areas with unfamiliar wind patterns, especially in something like the mountains where wind will come up the hills and down the hills, and they flow in different ways other than what you can get the weather from the airports at, you would have to be very confident in your flying abilities and confident with reason in your flying abilities to come out and work in situations like this. And then you see people out doing mountain rescues in the Swiss Alps, out west, and up in Canada, and the mountains up there, which are double the elevation of this, if not more. It's a weird way to land it down there. So you would have to be very, very confident in your skills there. From what Cletus said in one of his videos or his posts, that every pilot that's out there and every pilot that he met out there has been very clear about flying within the capabilities that they know that they have. They're flying well underneath their 100% capability. Sure, somebody may be able to sit here and flare and come down and lose the speed and drop the altitude quickly and more or less fly upside down and fight settling with power because they know how to keep forward airspeed up and to come down here and hit a landing like that. But that's not the safe thing to do. That's flying at a 100% capacity, and that's not what you want to do, to not risk putting yourself to be a danger to others around you and making yourself the problem that people have to deal with. So it's kind of an important thing to say, where if one day if you're ever in a situation like this, or if I am, you have to know what your personal limits are. You have to know what your personal capabilities are. If we're just talking on a numbers percentage, let's say you are capable of using your helicopter to bring in 1,000 pounds of water supplies, people, whatever, properly balanced and payloaded correctly. But the 1,000 pounds is the absolute upper limit of what you're comfortable flying with, just because that's how well that you know what your aircraft is. So these people are out there flying with 800 pounds. If you know you're able to land in a field that's 100 by 100 and be comfortable clearing trees in that confined of an area, they're landing in fields that are 200 by 200. They're not taking any unnecessary risks to save one life, because it could turn into an unnecessary risk to save more than one life if something goes wrong. It's much better to find a place to land that's a little bit out of the way and people carry some food and water in, and either carry somebody that needs to be medevaced out or have them walk out. If they're just an old person or a mother with a child, they can walk to you, and it's a much safer thing for them to come to you rather than try to get exactly to their doorstep. And it's something I was very happy seeing, because there are many times when people have I wouldn't even call it an imposter syndrome, but they let their idea of the drive to get something done take hold, and they're overconfident in skills, and that leads to problems. And you see that in a handful of different things. Luckily, I feel like aviation is such a controlled environment, or a controlled type of thing. I am barely using collective right now, trying to come down, but any forward airspeed that I have currently is just keeping me afloat. Anyways, but yeah, a lot of people put themselves and others at unnecessary dangers just because they have a false sense of how good they are. And this isn't the place to do this. This is the place to know that you have a 90% thing. Just like if you are going out to your first track day as a motorcycle enthusiast, you're not going to ride at 100% around the track. You're going to take it at 80. Once you get more comfortable on the bike, you can come out to 90 or even 100% and try to push as much as you can, especially if you have the money to replace any broken parts. But it's important to keep it slow. And especially street riding, you never want to push to 100% on the street. It's too many variables that are unknown in that sort of way, shape, or form, to where it could be clippings in the road, brother, or it could be somebody's dog running out. I am barely using any power right there, but it was a soft set down, so that's nice. But yeah, you gotta know what your capabilities are and what you can and can't do. Let's see, let's get out of VR mode. I'll kind of wear you guys on the forehead, and we'll pick something else. Let's do another very popular helicopter that people are using. I'm going to use the Bell 206 B3. Once again, try to set this up for heavy ops. Passenger left. Baggages, let's throw 250. There we go, we are 100 pounds overweight. Let's see if that saves. Don't mind the glitchiness. I'm gonna wait to check the weight and balance once it's going, so I don't have to pop in and out of VR. Yep, pooch me on that. 190. 190. 190. Baggages, 300. We are 150 pounds overweight now. Beautiful. I'm sitting very far back. Keep your hand off the collective, sir. Nobody asked. I have to be taller than my co-pilot. That's unacceptable. Let's move forward a little bit so I don't lean back into the wall here. That way my cyclic actually feels like where it is in real life for me. There you go, puny man. Okay, let's do this. Do I still feel center? Does this feel... I think we feel alright. Let's move that cable a little bit. I am very overweight. I don't know why it... Did I select a helipad? That was strange. Ooh. So let's point out the torque gauge in this Bell 206 so you can see it. Let me get my laser pointer of doom. VR controls. Okay, yeah, cool, I understand. So I think y'all are left eye. I'll actually look at my phone real quick to see what it looks like for the stream. Okay, cool. That works. I just see comments now. I'm now looking. It says, Joe, how do you know all this? I think the first one was a typo. I know all this, this magical thing called a minor obsession with aviation. I'm doing a lot of studying in my own time, my own personal ground school, if you can call it that. So yeah, let's watch this torque gauge real quick. I'm going to see if we can bring it up to a hover. Let's see, we go. I'm already bouncing down because I'm using so much, but you can see I'm very up near the yellow on the torque gauge on that, and that's with some forward movement. So let me sit down. How do I know all this, Mr. whoever your name was? Sorry, I already forgot. I know all this because I've been studying. You know, it's being a helicopter pilot is something I would like to do. So I'm taking my learning very seriously. I'm not just tooting around on the flight simulator. Sadly enough, I wish that was enough, but it's not. Boy, you can really feel 150 pounds overweight here. As you can see, I'm now in the green on the torque gauge down there. And that's also because I am moving forward at around 40 knots now. But yeah, I've been studying. You know, it's I also understand the physics of how it works. For the most part, on all of it, I'm not going to claim to be an expert. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a very real thing. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I like to think that I do have a good idea of how everything generally works together. Some good resources to look at this sort of things. There's Helicopter Online Ground School, or HOGS. They have a pretty solid YouTube channel for anybody learning to be a pilot.
Asheville approach helicopter November 420 Sierra
Even in
November is
Cletus's
type
video, he does a good job of
helicopter
explaining a
226,
few
331
things.
miles
Heavy
north,
D
2100
goes over a
feet.
few things in his videos as well.
Clearance to transition Charlie
Boy, this
airspace.
150 pounds is noticeable, I will tell you guys that. The 50 pounds didn't seem that noticeable, but this is also a different platform, so I'm trying to keep it under the yellow.
7665 helicopter 0 Sierra
Either way,
November.
also one of the better channels for learning anything about how the helicopter works was Smarter Every Day. He has a lot of videos on it, surprisingly. He likes the deep dive stuff, so if you really want to figure it out, you can look into his a bit more, but his talks more about the relationship between your anti-torque pedals, or your rudder pedals if you want to call it for our airplane words, the collective, which is your up and down lever here, and your cyclic, which is your stick in the middle. He talks about the relation of all of those, auto rotations, which is how you land without power going to the actual rotor system itself. You use the wind that you fall through to land, but those are good resources to getting the start to an idea of how the systems work. While you are beating the air into submission to fly, there is a bit more finesse and cleverness to it as well for how everything works together. On top of that, like I said, it's a bit of an obsession with me. I've always liked helicopters, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I really made a decision like, okay, cool, I'm going to start saving up and trying to get to the point where I can get my own license. And I work in the film industry, so I then started suffering through all the shutdowns for 2020, 2022 with the health issues that were going around. I started saving up again after recovering from not working for a while with that. Started saving up again, and then we shut down for the writer's strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike. And then now there was just another almost strike with my union, as well as the Teamster union, which would be the people who drive the vehicles and trucks and stuff like that for the crew. So they almost went on strike as well. So my savings has been beat up to a point where I'm not comfortable paying in full for lessons yet. Now, I could pay for a handful of hours right now, but I'd much rather pay for the 40 plus hours initially up front and get a discount for buying those hours in bulk. Let's see. I'm trying to look at my phone where I have the chat open as well right there. Sorry for swerving. I'm not a drunk pilot. 8 hours bottle to throttle, guys. 8 hours. And that's even if you bottle. So I'm going to do a normal approach now. I assume I'm closer to around 120 pounds overweight at the moment. I'm going to shoot for in between these first two houses here. But I am descending a bit quick now because I had a bit steeper of an approach than I wanted. But I want to try to keep enough forward airspeed as I can until I'm in the area of ground effect. And then I'll work on catching this here. In ground effect, so I'm using a little bit less power, but I'm still touching in the yellow on my torque gauge, which is not good. It's stressful for the engine. You can a bit snowball the effect of you start losing RPM and the engine becomes less effective, so you start losing more RPM. Here we go. This is another reason why you kind of need the run up to get going. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put myself in between these trees really slow myself down here. And what I'm going to do is pretend that I just set myself down in a small hole of trees, and by some miracle I was able to come down successfully without smashing my skids into the ground. And here I am 100 pounds over payload because I didn't bring a scale with me, or I didn't ask people how much they weighed before getting in, and now I'm going to try to extract the overweightness of America over these trees here in front of me without over-torquing the engine, which doesn't seem like it's going to work. There we go, I bounced over the 100% allowable torque there. And that gauge, if I turn a little bit left, we'll keep that in the shadows. And I do not have really any more power than that. I am pushing it beyond what you should push it. It's not there to use every time. But that's when you start running stress-through engines. A lot of times you'll see in different airplanes or any sort of aircraft, you'll see that you can run cruising power to be at, let's say, 60 to 70% of an engine's 300 horsepower, 400 horsepower. But you can use more than that power for an allowable amount of time. Like a Pilatus PC-12, for instance, you're allowed to use, I think it's a 900 horsepower engine. Let's say you can use 850 horsepower for up to 5 minutes during climb. Same rules apply to helicopters because they all have to be rated for something. They all have to be rated for some sort of power output for getting over something like those trees there. And I believe in that situation there, I would not have been able to get out with the amount of weight I had there. For me overstressing the engine and the torque values, I'm not sure how well this particular model affects engines and damage to engines from stressful or overstressing them. But that could have been a thousand, if not thousands of dollar mistake. Engines in a helicopter like this can cost upwards of $50,000 to $200,000, depending if you're getting one used that has time on it, with time left, overhauled, brand new. It's such an expensive thing to do when you can say, hey, I'll be back in a few minutes to go grab the next person. And it's a smart thing to do as a pilot. And I said it before coming into land with the MD, I'm very proud of everybody who's up there right now. As somebody who's a helicopter enthusiast, wishes I could be up there doing something, whether it was loading or just being around them, getting to talk to the people who are doing this and learning what their story is, how they got into it, picking their brains, but also making a difference. I'm not able to get up there right now with my work schedule, but I'm hoping that this little video here, this little stream, that people will watch it after it's over, after it's off, and have a little bit more of an understanding of how a helicopter works, what is and what isn't allowed. I have people back there too. I do. It's hard to keep straight when I'm trying to look behind me. I don't know what my front's doing. Ooh, that's actually a good one right there. Let's see if we can land inside of this, the courtyard of this building. So yeah, this will be a very good demonstration of what could or could not be possible with an overloaded helicopter, which actually I'm going to come over to the field real quick and put myself like maybe 250 pounds overweight. So that way it's an extremely obvious thing of how well or how unwell a helicopter can do with being overweight, because it's not just a go straight up and down machine. That's why you see a lot of smaller helicopters, and even or especially at altitude when you're at a mountain area, you'll see them getting a run down the runway, just that way they can get that airspeed over in the transitional left to clear any sort of obstacles. Okay, let's see. I gotta take y'all off right there real quick. Let's come back up to my mouse. There it is. Yeah, 100 pounds overweight. Just add fuel. There we go. 250 pounds overweight currently. There we go. Let's hop back in here. Center up. Let's get taller than my co-pilot, who will not be taller than me. Let's scoot forward to where this feels natural. Okay, let's see if we can just take off normally here. Barely, while staying in the confines of the torque of the engine. I'm going to cheat it some and kind of say engine be damned getting off the ground, because I'm trying to get over here to this building to our left over here. What is it? It's currently 74 degrees or 72, 73 degrees on the thermometer there. I wonder how accurate that card there is for available power. Let's land and then let's look and see what it says. What I might even do, I might even come in at an angle. To fit the tail in. Because I'm actually not sure if we can fit or not. If it does crash me out, I'm sorry. We'll go back and try something else. Okay, I feel like my main rotor is clear at this. I'm using 90 to 100% power there, bumping over 100% torque to 110. Boy, that's a thing, isn't it? Okay, cool. Yeah, we had plenty of room on the tail. Let's see. How accurate is that? Let's see. We were at 71 degrees. Okay, we gotta look at it in Celsius. Great. The wrong way to do this. 22. 25 airspeed limits. At 130. Pressure altitude times 1,000 feet. What are we at? We're about 2,000 feet. So we're looking at 130 max. Airspeed limits above gross weight. We're definitely above gross weight. 130, 127. Okay, that's just an airspeed thing. Cool. Okay, let's try to take off without taking the torque over the 80% limit. Really got to center out my stick here. My cyclic. Oop. Nope. See, it's hitting 90% there. I don't want to be in the 90s. Oop. And me moving the cyclic a good bit there to correct a movement took us up over 100. So that's another thing to know with the torque. Here I'm pushing forward on the cyclic. You can see it's taking the torque of the engine up there because it is moving the cyclic around, is adding pitch to the blade. When I put the cyclic to the right here, it's adding pitch to the left side only, to the right side only, and that tilts the helicopter to move that way, or tilts the helicopter forward, tilts the helicopter backwards. So I wonder if I can... Nope. Got something there. Sorry, guys. I don't know what I hit. Apparently there was some sort of thing in the way that we could not see. Some sort of invisible obstacle that we bumped into. And that's it. Like I said, there is an available limit of power on helicopters, and some of them are not powerful enough to be effective at altitude or at certain weights or whatever you'd like to consider it. It's just it's the nature of what they are. It's the nature of what they're capable of. There's a lot of things that are there with that. It's just you have to learn to deal with it. You have to know what the limits of your aircraft is. I don't want to say it's a sad thing or a bad thing, but you got to know, and everybody who's out there is doing such a good job. The approval from me means nothing, but as somebody who appreciates what is going on out there as far as an effort by thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans to go out there and provide help to people who probably feel forgotten, it's very nice to see. Let's go out here, fly some higher mountains. Where's the highest mountains? Let's go Space Needle. Ew, gross. Don't want to be there. Live? What time is it out there? Okay, cool. Let's get a good sunset-ish sort of flight. What do you guys think? Actually, this is such a beautiful area anyways. So let's do Astoria. And we're going to mimic my friend. Liveries. Yellow. It's just going to reset my weight and balance anyway, so I'm not going to care. Boats turned all the way up, so hopefully we're going to get some boat action. And let's do some Columbia River bar piloting. Piloting. Columbia River bar pilots piloting. Let's see, ready to fly. Let's hop out of this real quick. Oh no, I don't want to go that far out. How did I do this? Oh, okay. Let's see. 190. 190. 190. 230. Sure. A 7,000-pound vehicle in this configuration at 50% fuel. Phenomenal. Okay, look forward, get that adjusted. I am sitting way far backward. Gotta be taller than you. Sorry, honey. That's just how it is. And then we go a little bit back, actually. Cool, I like the way that feels. Let me get this thing. Cool, I'll have that ready when it comes time. And now I'm just going to push the collective, or the cyclic forward, add a little bit of collective, and we'll start rolling. There might be a different way to do this, but I don't have that set up with my current controls. So we're going to do it this way. We are in the Bell 222. The reason I'm doing this is because it's retractable gear. And it kind of has the look of a 109. We are not on center line, but nobody's here. Look, Mom, we're an airplane. We're inferior. Look, Mom, we're affected by winds. We can't just take off vertically because we're not a helicopter. Okay, cool. So let's get going. Gotta bring this up before we start going too fast. Boop, 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 boop. Nobody cares. It'd be very interesting to be in a position to where you can fly a private helicopter. Oh, the shadow looked funny for a second. Oh, we have a boat. Hell yeah, that's what we're going for, guys. We have a boat. I don't remember if I covered this in another stream, but there is a group of pilots and hoist operators and shipping pilots that are specific to the Columbia River up near in Washington and Oregon, the Columbia River bar pilots. And now what do they do? So rivers change all the time. There's always silt getting moved around. There is always something in the way, whether it be dredging, areas that need to be dredged, areas that were freshly dredged, new rain flow and debris that comes down and can maybe clog up the channel or something moves, and maybe sometimes they just don't dredge the river itself and they run by what the natural flow of the channel is. So with that said, these shipping companies that bring ships into Savannah, Georgia, to the Columbia River here, they may not always be completely knowledgeable on how everything works, what the movement's like for ships passing each other, etc., in somewhere like this. So how do you fix that? You have local pilots or ship captains get on the ships as they're going in and out, and as they're going out, they'll hop on the ship at the port, drive it out, captain it out, pilot it out. And as they're coming in, a helicopter like this will fly out and drop off the pilot on the boat for them to drive the ship in. Places like Savannah do not do this with helicopters. I wish they would. My home state's Georgia. I'd like for it to be an option for being somewhere near where I live. I'd really prefer not to live up in the Pacific Northwest, despite how beautiful it is. But it would be a very neat job to be able to do regardless, as far as the piloting goes. I think in Savannah they take boats out, some like rigid hull, inflatable bow boats, the rib boats, or some sort of smaller coast guardy, like patrol, small boats. Nothing huge, you know. They don't need to pull up next to these ships there with something that's of equal size. They need to get out there quickly, drop off one person, and get back out of there, and be maneuverable and relatively cheap to operate. In Savannah, Georgia, yeah, they only do boats down there. But in the Columbia River, there are the bar pilots. They fly, I think, 109s out there, I believe, through Brim Aviation. Ooh, this is a natural gas boat. I believe that's what these circular pressure containers are on ships like this. And actually, is this ship moving backwards? They forget something? Hello, sunset. So how the bar pilots work out for stuff like this, yep, they are, at least I think, disconnected, reconnecting. Okay, reconnection successful. Welcome back, guys. Let's shut this thing up real quick. There's my laser pointer. Sorry, I'm not a bad pilot. I'm just correcting him with my laser pointer because we were below an altitude. So what he was a mechanic on the helicopters that they had, and he was also their hoist operator. So what he would be the person in the back seat that would open the door, make sure whichever person he was putting out the door, make sure that they were strapped in and harnessed correctly. Then he would operate the hoist as whoever the pilot is would be up front, matching the speed, which it looks like this one would probably be a bridge drop. I don't know what the AI model does when it gets to a bar like this. Well, see, they obviously don't have a pilot. They're coming in, they're just going to run it aground. But then he would operate the hoist and be telling me in my ear, come right, come left, forward, down 10 feet, up 10 feet. You know, whatever he needs to tell me for me to do my job appropriately as the pilot. And he would drop the ship, their captain, or their shipping pilot, to successfully get this ship into the channel without running into a sandbar like they are over here. Which, interesting. I wonder why they have this one going backwards. I wonder if that's just a failure of the model or something. Either way, I don't know how far out at sea they would usually get a pilot onto the boat. Kind of want to back off and see how this handles this situation here. So yeah, I don't know how far out at sea they would have to get a pilot on there by regulation, or if it's just within, if they're within range, get them out there so that way they don't have to worry about it when it gets close if something else happens or comes up. I don't know if it's something that's scheduled. Is it going to go forward now? Does it just go back and forward? Kind of like cars on some of these roads. Oh no, it's turning. Hey, we must have dropped the pilot off on there and he's doing a good job. I wonder if he's going to keep it going in reverse or if he's going to I would assume whoever we dropped off on this boat, on this ship, would know that he can do more than just back it down the channel. But I wanted to have a longer run at trying to imitate them dropping somebody off on it. But now that they're correcting course, I'll turn around and make another approach at it. And we'll do another mock drop-off or pickup, depending on how you want to look at it. Oh, they did a hard 90, didn't they? Okay, let's get down here. We're going to do this off the pilot side, the right side on this one, so that way I can have a view out my window. Which actually, I wonder if this is a... Nope, I can't do that. Okay. I was curious if there was like a secondary window below that could give me a better view. So what I'll do, I'll wait for him to catch up. I'll kind of start a hover here. I know I'm going slow enough. Shut up. Hello. So what y'all couldn't see there was a good example of why the anti-torque pedals exist. I pulled up on my collective to get a little bit of altitude after having to pick up my VR controller to turn off the caution alarm. And adding the extra collective gave me a strong turn to the right, because that's the opposite direction of what the main rotor turns. And that's what the anti-turn or the anti-torque pedals, the rotor pedals, are for, is to keep the helicopter straight, to keep the entire thing from trying to turn with the rotors itself. Sorry if it's glitchy for you. I'm having to look at it too. We're in this together. Okay, so we've got the guy on the line now, we'll assume. So as we're winching up, I'll pull off so we're not of issue to the boat anymore. He'll wave goodbye. My friend Val is in the back. I'm getting them up. I'm going to keep the airspeed lower though. I was getting ready to go back in. So we're keeping the airspeed so the guy is not blowing around behind us. Let's do a good slow speed, so we'll pretend we just picked him up again. I'm over here not letting my guys do their job. So we're kind of matching the speed of the boat, but off to the side. Getting picked up. Getting them in. Then he says, okay, we got them. Little lean forward, little up on the collective. We'll start building some speed. And getting back to Astoria Regional. Vision Jet. Who else we got out here? Doubtful Folder. OS Yellow Bear. Chris. And a whole bunch of people up there. Not wanting to deal with that. So yeah, we'll come back over here to Astoria Regional and put it down, and we'll call it a stream. Let's summarize kind of what we went over earlier. If you're just now here, basically helicopters have a limit of what they can do as far as going up, going down, and a lot of that comes down to the power available. You would initially think helicopters are able to pull the collective up and just go up, put the collective down and go down at whatever rate or whatever altitude they would like. But since the rotor is always turning at the same speed, and the thing that adds more lift is putting more pitch into the rotor itself, you can only turn that so fast before your engine loses the ability to spin that much pitch into the rotor. So something small like a Robinson R22 or the 4-seater Robinson R44 or a lot of different things, they're just incapable of getting that much power out of it because the engine's just not there for it, you know, and there's only so much effective angle that you can put in the rotor system itself. So you need helicopters with more power to be able to put more pitch into blades, or to have more blades, or to have thicker blades, if fewer, like this one's a 2, like the Huey. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but horsepower is still very much a thing with all of these. So it's great for helicopters like the MD-500 that Cletus has, the 530s, which is the uprated model, because they have a very small footprint and they're able to get in there. And in my opinion, I like them because they're on skids, because you can set down and not have to worry about any damage to the bottom of the airframe itself. If you have a high skid model, you can set down in taller grass, and if there's a small stump under you, you shouldn't have to worry about anything happening to that. The smaller helicopters just aren't able to put that much weight in there without needing a lot more run up to get going. Even a Robinson with one person in there, you need room. You can't really just take straight up and off, or with the R22, just because there's not a lot of available power, and that helicopter's not made for that. Reconnecting. Okay. Are y'all reconnected now? Okay, cool. Welcome back. So yeah, I'm glad that everybody's out there doing their thing. I wish that I was at a point where I could do it, but that comes with time, and that comes with a lot of money. So I'm working, I'm saving, I'm studying outside of just doing helicopter sim. I'm reading and listening to pilots that have a lot more hours than I could ever wish to have. And I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to apply that to saving somebody's lives in some way, shape, or form. Shut up, we're still fast. Yeah, I'm not going to bring the gear down yet, we're still fast. Chill. There we go, you happy now? We're going to come down here to where I believe Brem's hangar is. And then we'll call that a stream, because I feel like I've been doing this for a little bit now. Although I haven't gone through any startup or shutdown procedures, today was more about flying and chatting. So we're going to leave it at that. I keep losing connection. Which way are they turning? Okay, cool, that way. Actually, no, they have circles on the ground over here. I'm going to use one of these circles on the ground. We'll try not to overfly Anybody? Except for these stupid little cars in my way. Are the circles there? Sometimes it will translate of... Yeah, there it is. I knew there was a circle on the ground somewhere over here. We'll point this out. A little bit of slow, low flying backwards. Bit of a rough landing, but we're here and we're alive. So, with that said, thank you anybody who's still here. Thank you anybody who watched. Or anybody who watches in the future. I know it cut out some. I'm on Starlink. Thank you, Elon, for at least being a thing at minimum. And we'll call that a good stream for the day.